I was 16 when I got kicked out. Not because I did drugs. Not because I got someone pregnant or ran with the wrong crowd. No, it was simpler than that, too simple, really. My parents liked my sister more than me. I used to think maybe I was just imagining it, you know? That I was being too sensitive, misreading things. But after a while, it became impossible to ignore. I could have had a camera crew following us around and the favoritism would have been the main plot. Her name was Lisa. Lisa with the sunshine hair and the eyes that could cry on command. Lisa who never got grounded even when she accidentally crashed Dad's truck into the neighbor's mailbox. Lisa who I swear was born holding a get-out-of-jail-free card. Me? I was just the older one. The one who should have known better, the one who always seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The spare part in our picture-perfect family frame. One day, it all came to a head. It started small, like these things always do. A missed dinner. A forgotten birthday. But it added up. By the time I turned 16, I'd stopped expecting anything from my parents. Not even a pat on the back. Not even a how was school. Lisa had this way of making everything about her achievements, her problems, her moods. And Mom and Dad? They ate it up like it was gospel. But that night, it was the night I'll never forget. Lisa had come home crying. Again. This time, apparently I'd embarrassed her in front of her friends because I refused to give her money for lunch. Yeah, that was it. Never mind that I barely had lunch money myself and had been skipping meals to make ends meet because Dad forgot to give me my allowance. Again. She burst into tears at the dinner table, full mascara meltdown, and Mom immediately asked, "What did you do this time?" pointing at me like I was some dog that peed on the carpet. I tried to explain, but it didn't matter. It never mattered. You know what? Dad said, slamming his fork down. I'm sick of this tension. I'm sick of you always starting something. Maybe it's time you go live somewhere else. You want to act like you don't need this family? Fine. Don't. I blinked. Wait, was he serious? Lisa sat there, watching me with this little smirk. That tiny, smug little twitch at the corner of her mouth. I knew that smile. That was the smile she gave me when she slipped a spider in my pillowcase when we were kids because I didn't let her play with my birthday gift. I think that's when I knew for sure this wasn't some fluke. This wasn't a misunderstanding. My family really didn't want me around. They didn't just kick me out that night. They wrote me off like I was some character who'd been cut from the script. I left with nothing but a backpack, $40, and a whole lot of questions. But I'll tell you what, I survived. Somehow. I couch surfed. Picked up whatever work I could. Slept in a shelter once or twice. There were nights I thought about going back, swallowing my pride, begging. But then I'd hear my dad's voice in my head, maybe it's time you go live somewhere else. So I did. And now, years later, guess what? They came crawling back. Funny how life works, huh? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you how that knock came at my door, before the tears and the apologies and the we didn't know, you need to know what happened in those in-between years. The years when I built something. A life. A family of my own, even if it didn't look like a Hallmark card. We'll get into all of that. For now, just remember this, the people who throw you out don't always stay gone. Sometimes they come back. But when they do, you don't owe them the version of you they expect. You owe them the truth. And I was just getting started. When you're 16 and the world suddenly becomes way bigger than you thought and way colder too, you learn fast who you are. I left that night with nothing but a busted backpack, some spare clothes, and a gut full of adrenaline. No big speech. No drama. Just slipped out the side door while my dad ranted about respect and Lisa cried crocodile tears upstairs. No one stopped me. It was almost funny. If I'd been holding a bag of trash, they might have said goodbye. I spent that first night at a 24-hour diner downtown. I bought a grilled cheese and a cup of coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, and I nursed the cup until the waitress with the red lipstick and tired eyes stopped pretending not to notice me. She brought me a refill and a blanket she said someone left in a booth last week. That was the first act of kindness I'd felt in a long time. I crashed in the corner booth until the manager came in around 5 a.m. and politely told me it was time to move on. I nodded, said thanks, and stepped out into the gray dawn, not sure where I was going. The next few weeks were survival mode, plain and simple. I couch surfed when I could. Squatted in a storage shed behind a grocery store for 2 nights, and even spent one night in a library until the janitor caught me sleeping under a table. I'd do odd jobs, mowing lawns, unloading trucks. Whatever I could to get a few bucks for food. One guy gave me $20 just for helping him jump his car in a parking lot. Another let me shower at a gym he managed. Looked at me and said, "You remind me of my son." I didn't know how to take that. Still don't. But it kept me going. I found a shelter eventually. Not the warm and fuzzy kind. This place was run down, smelled like sweat and fear. But it was a roof and they didn't ask too many questions. That was good. I wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. I kept thinking about Lisa. about my parents, about how fast they threw me away. And you know what? Somewhere between washing dishes at a diner and sleeping under scratchy blankets in a shelter bunk, something clicked. They didn't want me? Fine. But I was going to build a life so strong, so solid, they'd choke on their regret one day. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But peace came with a price. You had to work for it. Earn it. And man, I was ready to earn. I applied for my GED at 17. Used the address of the shelter. Took the bus every morning, studied at night. Worked shifts at a landscaping gig and saved every penny I didn't need for food or socks or shampoo. I had a system, 2 pairs of jeans, 3 shirts, 1 coat. Rotate. Keep clean. Stay invisible. Fly under the radar. Every now and then, I'd think about going back. Just to see if they missed me. If they even noticed. But then I'd remember Lisa's face. The way she smirked as they told me to get out. And I'd tighten my grip on the bus rail and remind myself. They don't deserve the version of you that made it. A year passed. Then another. I moved into a shared apartment with 2 other guys from the shelter program. One of them, Ray, used to be a construction foreman before his life blew up. Divorce, layoffs, you name it. The guy was tough but kind. Took me under his wing, taught me to swing a hammer right, showed me how to stretch a dollar till it squeaked. He used to say, "You build a thing straight once, and it'll stand longer than you ever will." That stuck with me. We worked side gigs together, demo work, painting, roofing in the summer. Miserable jobs, most of them, but they paid. And slowly, I started putting pieces of a life together. By the time I was 19, I'd scraped together enough to buy a second-hand laptop, enroll in online courses at the community college, and move into a tiny studio with a sink that constantly dripped and a radiator that banged like it was haunted. But it was mine. No one could kick me out. No one could say I wasn't supposed to exist. I didn't have a family, but I had something else. I had momentum. That's when the first message came. It was from Lisa, just her name in my inbox, like a ghost rising from the past. Subject line, "Hey, can we talk?" I didn't open it. Not yet, because something told me that chapter wasn't closed. It was just waiting for the right page to turn. So there I was, 19, sitting on a couch that was more springs than cushion, eating ramen straight from the pot like a civilized man, when I saw it. Lisa. Her name was right there in my inbox. After 3 years of silence. 3 years of nothing but memory and dust. I stared at it like it might bite me. Subject line, "Hey, can we talk?" Now, normally, I'd delete something like that so fast it'd make your spam folder jealous. But this one, I didn't. I just sat there, staring at it while my noodles went cold. Took me a week to open it. I'd log in, look at the subject line, log out. Like checking the mail when you're expecting a bill but hoping for a miracle. And then one night, I guess I just got tired of wondering. I clicked. Here's what it said. "Hey, I know you probably hate me. You have every right to. But I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't even know if this is still your email, but if it is, please know I've changed. I miss you. Mom and Dad do too. We talk about you all the time. If you ever want to talk, even just once, I'd really like that. Lisa." I reread it 5 times. Now, let me pause here and say this. There's an art to apologizing. And there's also an art to rewriting history. Lisa, she was a master of both. "We talk about you all the time." Yeah, right. They hadn't looked for me. They hadn't sent a single message, made a single call. The last thing my dad ever said to me was, "Maybe it's time you go live somewhere else." And now, I'm supposed to believe they sit around reminiscing about the good old days? Still, something about the email itched at me, like a splinter just beneath the skin. Not pain exactly, just enough discomfort to make me want to do something about it. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. Instead, I started watching. Quietly. Social media's a funny thing. You can block someone, delete their number, burn the bridge. But there's always a way to peek over the fence. And peek I did. Lisa had a whole life going on. She was in college now, or at least wearing sweatshirts that said so. Lots of pictures of brunches, sunsets, and inspirational quotes over beach backgrounds. The kind of stuff people post when they're trying really hard to seem okay. Then there were photos with Mom and Dad. Holidays, birthdays, that same house, the one I used to call home. Only now it looked smaller, dimmer, like it had aged faster than the people inside it. In one photo, my dad had a cane. Another showed my mom with a hospital bracelet barely hidden under her sleeve. That's when it hit me. Something had changed. And sure enough, a few weeks later, another email arrived. Hi again. I don't know if you read my last message. Mom's been sick. It's not life-threatening, but it's serious. Dad's been having issues with his heart. I don't want anything from you. I promise. I just think you deserve to know. We were wrong. I was wrong. I hope you're doing okay. Wherever you are. This one hit different. Not because I believed her, but because, for the first time, it sounded like she did. And here's the part one hate to admit. I missed them. Not the yelling. Not the favoritism. Not the cold shoulders and the guilt trips. But the idea of them. The idea of family. You can live without that, sure. I had. But it leaves a space in you. Not empty, just waiting. So I made a decision. I called an old friend, Ronnie, a guy I used to work side jobs with during the early days. He'd always said, "You're gonna make it, man. And when you do, they're gonna regret the hell out of missing it." I asked if I could crash with him a couple nights. Just a visit, I said. Back in town for some business. Which was a lie. The business was personal. I was going back. Not to stay. Not to forgive. But to see. To stand in front of the people who threw me out and show them I wasn't some broken-down stray they could feel sorry for. I was a man now. And if they wanted to speak to me, they'd be talking to that man. I took the bus. Not because I couldn't afford a flight, but because I needed time. The kind of quiet you can only find somewhere between towns that have 3-digit populations and gas stations that double as diners. There's something humbling about staring out a window for 12 hours straight. Watching trees blur into billboards for fireworks and antique malls. Makes you feel like the whole country's been moving on without you. Which I guess it had. I got off the bus around 9 p.m. Small station. 2 benches. 1 flickering soda machine that ate my dollar like it owed it lunch money. Ronnie picked me up in his beat-up truck. Headlights like 2 tired eyes. He didn't say much. Just gave me a quick once-over. Like he was checking I hadn't broken since the last time we saw each other. And nodded. "Still hate this town," I said, sliding into the passenger seat. He smirked. "That makes 2 of us." We didn't talk about where I was staying. It was understood. His couch, a blanket, and his old PlayStation humming in the background like nothing had changed. But I had changed. The next morning I stood outside the house I grew up in. The siding was peeling more than I remembered. The flower beds, Mom's pride and joy, were full of weeds. The porch light was on, even though it was 10 a.m. Something about that light being on in the daytime, it just felt wrong. I didn't knock. Not yet. I walked down the street instead. Past the corner where I used to ride my bike. The mailbox I crashed into when I was 7 and cried for 20 minutes until Mom said, "You're fine." Without even looking up from her magazine. The same neighborhood, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. Just a set built to look like a memory. I came back that afternoon. Knocked 3 times. The door opened slower than I expected. It was Mom. She looked older, sure. Not just age, but tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. Hair grayer at the roots. Cardigan buttoned wrong. Like she'd gotten distracted halfway through getting dressed. She didn't say anything. Just stood there, eyes wide. Like maybe I was a ghost. Then her mouth trembled. And she whispered, "Michael! That's my name, by the way. Michael." The one she used to forget to write on Christmas cards when sending out the family newsletter. I nodded. "Yeah." She reached out like she might touch me. But I didn't move. Are you okay?" she asked. "Been okay for a while," I said. She stepped back, opened the door wider. "Come in." It hit me then. How different everything smelled. You don't think about smell when you live somewhere. But when you come back, it's like a punch to the gut. Old wood, stale coffee, and something faintly medicinal, probably Dad's heart pills. Dad was in the recliner. Same one from 10 years ago, duct tape still clinging to one of the arms. He didn't stand. Just stared. "Well, I'll be," he muttered. "No, hi. No, how are you?" Just those 3 words and a face like someone had just seen a dog do a magic trick. I sat on the edge of the couch. Lisa wasn't there. I wondered if she was hiding or just absent. Either way, I was grateful. The silence stretched. Mom poured me a glass of water. Her hands shook. Dad cleared his throat. "We've been trying to reach you." I looked at him, calm as I could. "Yeah. I saw." We didn't know where to start, Mom added, perching on the ottoman like she couldn't decide whether to sit or kneel. You started with an email, I said. That's a choice. She flinched. Just a little. And then came the sigh. The long, defeated kind. Michael, we made mistakes. I wanted to laugh. Mistakes? Like burning the toast or missing a dentist appointment. But I didn't laugh. Instead I said, you didn't make a mistake. You just made a decision. To choose her. Every time. And to throw me out when it was convenient. Mom's eyes brimmed with tears. Dad stayed quiet. And here's what got me, I wasn't angry. Not really. I thought I would be. I thought I'd come back like some avenging ghost, full of righteous fury. But sitting there, all I felt was this weird, hollow sense of relief. Like putting down a suitcase I didn't realize I'd been carrying. They weren't monsters. They were just people who screwed up spectacularly. And now? Now they were paying for it. I stood after 20 minutes. I didn't come to make peace, I said. I came to see if I was right to leave. Dad finally looked me in the eye. And were you? I nodded. Yeah, I was. And with that I walked back out. Ronnie was waiting in the truck. Didn't even ask how it went. Just handed me a soda from the cup holder and turned the key. As we drove off I looked back once. Just once. The porch light was still on. It started with a letter. Not an email. Not a text. An actual handwritten letter, postmarked 2 days after I showed up at their front door for the first time in years. They didn't give it to me in person. They mailed it. Like we were pen pals instead of people with 10 years of silence and a shared bloodline. It arrived at Ronnie's place. Neat envelope. My name in that unmistakable cursive that only moms and elementary school teachers seem to perfect. Inside, the words were careful. Hesitant. Dear Michael. It meant the world to us to see you the other day. We know we don't deserve a second chance, but we'd like to talk again. About everything. Please let us know if we can meet. There's something important we need to discuss. Love, Mom and Dad. I stared at that letter a long time. Not because I didn't expect it, honestly, I kind of did, but because of when it came. Something important? That was code. Not for an apology. Not for closure. But for a favor. I waited 3 days. Then I called. Mom answered on the second ring, breath catching in her throat like she couldn't believe it was me. We exchanged the usual awkward small talk. How's the weather? Are you eating okay? Are you still working? Then she said it. The thing I knew was coming. Your father's been having a hard time. Hard time how? I asked, already knowing. She paused. Health, finances, you know how things have been. The world's changed. Translation, we're broke. She went on, voice trembling just enough to sound sincere, explained that Dad had heart issues, insurance didn't cover everything, medical bills were piling up. The hardware store, his pride and joy, had shut down years ago. Something about a big box chain opening nearby. We tried to hold on, she said. But it was just too much. Then came the phrase that made my stomach tighten. We were wondering if there's any way you could help us out. Just until we get back on our feet. There it was. The ask. It wasn't about family. It wasn't about righting wrongs. It was about money. And in that moment, all I could hear was my dad's voice from years ago. You think life's gonna hand you anything? You want something? Go earn it. And now? Now they wanted me to hand them something. I didn't say anything for a while. Just let the silence stretch. Mom finally whispered, Michael? Are you still there? Yeah, I said. I'm just wondering something. What's that? Do you remember what you said at that dinner party? The one where you called me a mistake. Silence. Then the soft gasp of a memory slamming into a brick wall. I was joking. No, I said calmly. You weren't. She started to cry then. Soft, restrained. Like even her tears were trying not to overstep. I told her I'd think about it. That was all I gave her. Ronnie was waiting when I hung up. I must have had that look on my face, the one that says I've just been asked to forget every scar I ever got and smile through it. You okay? He asked. I shrugged. They want help. He leaned back, arms crossed. Let me guess. Financial. Medical bills. Debt. Store's gone. Same house. Same old porch light. Ronnie let out a low whistle. You gonna help, Em? I don't know. And that was the truth. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut again. To remind them that I was once just a kid with a backpack and nowhere to go because they chose someone else. But another part of me? It wanted to see how far they'd go. How much truth they were really willing to face. So I made a decision. I called them back 2 days later and said we should meet. In person. Neutral ground. Someplace quiet. I picked a diner just outside town, the same one I'd washed dishes at when I was 17. It had changed a bit. New paint. New menu. But the same cracked booth in the back, the same bell above the door. They walked in right on time. Dad looked older. Thinner. Smaller somehow. Like life had been slowly chipping away at the statue he used to be. Mom wore too much makeup and too many layers for a summer afternoon. I could tell they'd both rehearsed what they were going to say. We didn't talk right away. Just ordered coffee. Sat there with this awkward, weighty silence between us. Then Dad cleared his throat. I know I wasn't fair to you. Back then. That was new. I raised an eyebrow. Back then? He shifted in his seat. I mean at times. I had a lot on my shoulders. The store. Your sister. It all just got in the way? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. Slid it across the table. Inside, hospital bills. Final notices. A foreclosure warning. It was all there. They weren't lying. They were sinking. And now they were reaching for the one life raft they'd thrown overboard a decade ago. I closed the folder, sipped my coffee, and said, I'll help you. Mom gasped. Dad exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. But I added, there are going to be conditions. Dad narrowed his eyes. What kind of conditions? The kind where we stop pretending the past didn't happen. When I said there'd be conditions, I meant it. And when my dad asked what kind, I leaned back in that booth, same cracked vinyl, same scent of burnt bacon and lemon disinfectant, and I looked him dead in the eye. The kind that starts with honesty, I said. Not just from me. From you. Both of you. They didn't speak right away. My mom's hands were folded so tight, her knuckles had gone white. Dad sat stone-faced, like a man being offered a deal that tasted more like crow than mercy. I let the silence sit for a while before continuing. You want help? Fine. But this isn't a transaction. This is a reckoning. You don't just get a blank check and a clean slate. You're going to acknowledge what happened. What you did. Michael, my mom whispered, we said we're sorry. No, I replied, you said you were having a hard time. You said you missed me. But you haven't owned a single thing. So here are the terms. All of them. I pulled a piece of paper from my backpack. No folder. No fancy printout. Just a single page with 4 conditions, handwritten in black ink, each one underlined. Simple. Firm. I laid it flat on the table between us. Dad looked at it like it was a court summons. Term 1, public acknowledgement. I want you to tell the truth, I said. Not just to me. To everyone. Your friends, the family you still talk to, the neighbors who think I ran away because I was a troubled teen. I want you to admit what you did. That you kicked me out. That you let me go without a fight. That Lisa wasn't the saint you made her out to be. Mom's lip trembled. We can't. You can, I interrupted. You just don't want to. Term 2, counseling. Family therapy. With me. And Morris. Morris, by the way, is my brother. The only one who didn't pretend I was invisible. He'd slipped me cash and a burner phone the night I left. And yeah, he was still around. You will sit in a room, week after week, and hear everything. Not defend. Not deflect. Just listen. Understand what it cost me to grow up in a house where I was treated like a mistake that never should have made it to delivery. Dad was shifting in his seat now. He looked like someone had slipped hot coals under the booth cushions. Term 3, legal agreement. This one's simple, I said. You will sign a legally binding document stating that you will never again ask me for financial assistance. No money. No loans. No guilt trips disguised as birthday cards. Nothing. Michael, that's cruel, Mom said, her voice cracking. No, I said. What was cruel was turning my bedroom into a home gym 2 months after reporting me missing. This is just a boundary. Term 4, Lisa. This one hurt the most to write. But it had to be there. You will not involve Lisa in any of this. No updates from her. No messages. No attempts to rebuild. She made her choices. She knew exactly what she was doing when she deleted my flight ticket and laughed while I stood alone at the airport. Mom's eyes welled up. She's still your sister. I looked at her. Long and quiet. No, I said. She was my sister. Now she's a stranger who knows all the ways to set fire to the things I love. They didn't respond right away. Dad rubbed his temples. Mom cried softly, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin she hadn't even unfolded. The check between us lay untouched. You want help, I said. Finally, you'll follow these terms. I'll pay your medical bills directly, not through you. I'll negotiate with your bank. I'll do it quietly, respectfully. But only if you do this. Still no answer. So I stood up. You don't have to decide now, I said. You've got 72 hours. And then I walked out. Felt the sun hit my face. Took a breath that didn't feel like I owed it to anybody. When I walked out of that diner, I didn't feel triumphant. No cinematic slow-motion moment. No epic music playing in my head. Just the weight of old wounds that still had the nerve to itch even after all these years. I went back to Ronnie's place, sat on the porch with a cup of gas station coffee and stared at the sunset like I was expecting it to hand me an answer. It didn't. But you know what did? A knock on the door. 3 knocks, actually. And a voice, Michael. It wasn't my parents. It was Morris. He'd flown in the day before. Quiet. Unannounced. He always had a way of showing up exactly when I didn't know I needed someone. He hugged me like a brother should. Not like a man making amends, but like someone who never left in the first place. I heard, he said. He didn't have to say more. We sat in silence for a bit, watching the sun sink behind the roof lines of houses we'd both sworn to forget. Think they'll do it? He asked. I shrugged. If they're desperate enough. You think you could ever forgive them? I thought for a long time before I answered. Forgiveness is a door, I said. They can knock on it. But I'm the one who decides if it opens. Hour 12. No call. No text. Hour 24. Still nothing. I'd like to say I didn't care, but I did. Every quiet minute scraped at me. Part of me thought they'd walk away. That they'd say the terms were too much, that I was being unreasonable. But part of me also knew, desperate people don't always do what's easy. They do what they have to do. And on hour 42, my phone rang. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text came through from Morris. They're ready. We met in the same diner. This time, I wasn't alone. Morris came with me. He sat beside me not like a sidekick, but like a wall. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. Mom and Dad were already there when we arrived. They looked smaller, somehow. Not physically, but in presence. Like their shadows didn't stretch as far as they used to. There was no folder this time. No performance. No pleasantries. Just a thick manila envelope on the table. Signed. Every page of it. The contract. The counseling agreement. The public acknowledgement statement. All of it. I had to call a lawyer, my dad muttered. He said it was legally sound. I know, I replied. I wrote it with one. Mom looked up at me. Her mascara was smeared, but for once it wasn't from performative tears. She looked tired. Worn in a way that comes from being seen clearly for the first time and not liking the reflection. We'll do it, she said quietly. All of it. Not for money, Dad added. Not just for that. I raised an eyebrow. No? No, he said, voice rough. Because it's true. What you wrote. What we did. We failed you. Silence. And for the first time since I was a teenager, I saw my father not as the man who kicked me out, but as a man who'd finally run out of excuses. We started therapy 2 weeks later. Family counseling is not a quick fix. It's a messy excavation. Every session was like opening up an old attic and realizing you've been living under the weight of things no one wanted to deal with. My mom cried a lot. My dad barely spoke in the first 3 sessions. And Morris, he helped keep the ship steady. Sometimes he'd talk. Sometimes he'd just nod when I couldn't find the words. But I showed up. And so did they. I wouldn't say we were healing, not yet. But we were digging. And that counts for something. In the meantime, I paid their medical bills. Quietly. Anonymously. I never gave them cash. Only receipts. And I had a lawyer contact the bank about restructuring their mortgage, not wiping it clean, not giving them the house back for free, but stabilizing it. Just enough to breathe. They didn't thank me. Not at first. I think they knew it wasn't the right time. Maybe they were finally learning that earning someone's trust takes more than paperwork and promises. A month passed. Then, too, we kept going to therapy. Lisa never came up. Not once. Until session 5. I still don't understand why you won't talk to her, my mom said, eyes lowered. Because she knew, I said. And she laughed. My dad didn't defend her. That more than anything told me they were starting to get it. I was doing okay. No, really. Therapy had become a strange kind of rhythm. Once a week, in that beige room with the flickering floor lamp and the slow-talking counselor named Sandra, my parents and I would take turns poking at the bruises we used to pretend weren't there. They listened more now. Flinched less when I brought up the things they'd done or didn't do. It didn't make it better, but it made it real. And real was more than I'd ever been allowed before. Then came the call. It was Morris again. 3 words. Grandma's gone. He didn't have to say which one. It was my dad's mom. The only one in the family who had ever looked me in the eye and made me feel like I mattered. I remember one summer, I was 10, she caught my dad yelling at me in the backyard over something stupid. I'd spilled gas while helping him mow the lawn. Grandma came out with a popsicle in each hand and just said, "That's enough, Banks. You scare the boy more than you teach him." Banks. That was my dad's name. No one else talked to him like that. But she did. And when she hugged me afterward, she whispered, "You are not the mistake they think you are." That hug? I held onto it for years like a secret treasure. So when I heard she was gone, I wasn't just sad. I was shattered in a quiet, confused way. Like a part of me had been holding out hope that someone in the older generation would come in, fix it all, and tell me I wasn't crazy for remembering things the way I did. She was that someone. And now she was gone. The funeral was on a Saturday. Small-town church. The same place they baptized me as a baby. Funny how circles close, isn't it? I almost didn't go. Not because I didn't want to honor her, but because I knew who else would be there. Lisa. But Morris convinced me. She loved you more than all of us put together, he said. You show up for her. Not for them. He was right. So I went. Walking into that church felt like stepping back into a role I'd already been fired from. People turned to look at me like I was a ghost in a suit. I saw Lisa. She saw me. Neither of us moved. She looked tired. Makeup heavy, smile forced. Like she was trying to look put together but hadn't slept in a week. Her eyes were just as sharp as I remembered, still full of calculation. But she didn't come over. She didn't say a word. And neither did I. I sat in the back pew next to Morris, hands folded tight in my lap. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The grief was too tangled with history. My dad spoke at the pulpit. He got choked up. Talked about how Grandma had always been the moral compass of the family. I felt a laugh scratch at my throat. Not because it was funny, but because it was the first time I'd ever heard him admit someone else had more sense than him. When the service ended, people filed past me like I wasn't there. Except for one woman, my aunt. She leaned down, squeezed my shoulder, and whispered she was proud of you. She always said so. That's when I cried. Just a little. Just enough to sting. At the reception, I stuck to the edges. Ate a cookie I didn't taste. Dodged conversations. Until Lisa approached. Same smirk. Same calculated walk. But slower now. Hey, stranger, she said. I looked at her. Let the silence sit. You're not gonna say hi? I think I just did. She rolled her eyes. Look, I know you hate me. I don't hate you, I said. I just stopped letting you hurt me. That stunned her for a second. Then she laughed. A short, hollow thing. You always were dramatic. No, I said, standing up. I was just paying attention. She tried to say more, but I walked away. Left her standing there in the middle of the room holding a plastic cup of lemonade she'd never intended to drink. Later that night, I stood at Grandma's grave long after the sun went down. Just me, the crickets, and a breeze that felt like October even though it was still September. I knelt down, put my hand on the headstone, and I whispered. You were the only one who saw me. Thank you. I'm okay now, I think. And for the first time since all of this started, I meant it. Grief does a weird thing to you. Not just the kind you feel when someone dies. I'm talking about the grief that comes from realizing how much time you've spent waiting for apologies, for recognition, for people to become something they never were. I carried the kind of grief around like an extra coat. Too heavy for summer, too thin for winter. Just always there. But after the funeral, something shifted. Not overnight. It wasn't like I woke up the next morning ready to forgive or forget. But I started waking up lighter. The weight wasn't gone, but I wasn't letting it dig into my shoulders the same way. That's when I realized something simple, something strange. I was no longer surviving. I was living. The counseling sessions with my parents continued. Slowly. Clumsily. Sometimes painfully. Session 7, my mom broke down while I was talking about the night she laughed at that dinner party, the "he's the 1% joke. She said she remembered it but never thought I had. I didn't think it mattered, she said. You didn't think I mattered, I corrected. She didn't deny it. Didn't make excuses. Just cried. That was a first. My dad stayed quiet through most of those sessions. He was always more of a concrete guy, literally and emotionally. He poured driveways, not feelings. But in session 9, he finally looked up and said, I thought being hard on you would make you tougher. Turns out all I did was make you leave. I sat there stunned. Not because I didn't already know that, but because hearing it out loud felt like someone finally found the switch in a pitch-black room. He added, I never knew how to raise someone who wasn't like me. And I said, without bitterness, you didn't even try. He didn't argue. He just nodded. That felt like progress. Outside of those walls, my life kept moving forward. I'd started putting down roots in a way I hadn't before. Not just surviving paycheck to paycheck or city to city, but building a life. I had my own place, modest, but mine. A job I actually liked. Friends who didn't know me as the mistake, but just Michael. And yeah, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first. Just dinners, laughter, walks that turned into real conversations. I was careful with my heart, like a guy trying to replant a tree that had been ripped out by the roots. But there was one girl, Emily. Met her at a bookstore. I was buying a used copy of East of Eden. She was in the poetry aisle talking to herself about whether Rupi Kaur counted as real literature. She had this energy like life hadn't knocked her down yet, or maybe it had and she got back up swinging. We started small. Coffee. Then brunch. Then a hike where she saw me trip over a root and laughed with me instead of at me. Different kind of laugh than I was used to. Gentle. Warm. Human. By the 3rd month, she knew the story. Not all of it. But enough. She didn't flinch. Didn't say that's awful or I'm sorry like it was a reflex. She said you made it. You're here. That's what matters. And I believed her. One day a letter came in the mail. Handwritten. From my mom. No ask. No update. Just 4 words. We're proud of you. I didn't cry. But I sat with it a long time. Not because it fixed anything. but because for once it didn't ask for anything. Morris and I still talk every week. He's doing well. Married now. New baby on the way. Named me godfather, if you can believe that. Seems only right, he said. You practically raised yourself. Maybe now you can help raise someone else. That hit me. Not in a painful way, but in a hopeful one. Because maybe that's what rebuilding really is, not forgetting the foundation cracked, but deciding to build anyway. There's this moment, quiet, unannounced, that comes after years of anger, grief, and disappointment. A moment where you realize nobody's going to hand you closure in a neat little envelope. There's no final scene. No crowd clapping when you win. Just you. Standing still. Looking at the people who broke you. And deciding what kind of man you want to be now. That was my choice. And the weirdest part? It didn't come in therapy. It didn't come at a funeral. It didn't even come during some deep, soul-searching night under the stars. It came while I was helping my dad fix a leaky faucet. Yeah, a faucet. Let me explain. We were 3 months into counseling. Communication was less of a war zone and more like a cautious truce. Still no Lisa. Still no family dinners. But there were efforts. Real ones. Dad called one day, said the kitchen faucet was dripping and he couldn't figure out the seal. Didn't even ask me to come help, just mentioned it like he was talking to a neighbor who might know a thing or two. I showed up with a wrench and a replacement washer. Didn't say much while we worked. Just the kind of quiet you get when hands are busy and the past feels a little less heavy. At one point, I looked over and saw him watching me, not with pity or guilt, but like he was trying to memorize something. You're good at this, he said. I shrugged. Tight spaces, busted parts, stuff that doesn't fit together right, feels familiar. He chuckled. Then he said something I didn't expect. You're nothing like me. And that's a good thing. I didn't respond right away. Just tightened the last bolt, wiped my hands, and nodded. That night, I walked home thinking about everything we'd been through. Everything I'd been through. And I realized something. They'd broken me once. Yes, that's true. But they didn't get to define me. That was my choice. And I had already made it quietly, slowly, over the years, without even realizing. I chose to be the kind of man who didn't turn into them. I chose to build a life, not out of spite, but out of purpose. I chose peace over revenge. I chose boundaries over bitterness. I chose love, a real, earned love, with people who showed up when it counted. Some people think forgiveness means saying it's okay. But I don't think it is. What happened wasn't okay. What they did, the years they let me suffer in silence, the things they laughed off, the doors they closed behind me, it wasn't okay. But I still chose to move forward. Not for them. For me. Because there's freedom in not needing someone to admit they were wrong before you start living like you're right. Lisa never apologized. Not really. She sent one message after Grandma's funeral. A long one. Full of excuses disguised as introspection. I didn't respond. Not out of spite. I just didn't need to anymore. I didn't need her to see me. I already did. Last month I helped Morris paint the nursery. His kids do any day now. While we were taping up the corners, he said, "You ever think about having kids of your own someday?" I didn't answer right away. But then I smiled and said, "Yeah. I think I could do better." He smirked. "Yeah. You probably could. And me? I'm still here. Still building. Still healing. Still choosing. Because family can betray you. They can disappoint you. But they don't get to decide who you become after that. You do. And I chose to be whole. Even if I had to do it piece by piece. That's the end of my story. 10 parts. 1,000 truths. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. For seeing me. For walking with me through the storm and the stillness. And maybe, just maybe, if you've got your own story tucked away inside, you'll find the strength to tell it too. Because you deserve to be heard. Mistake or not.